in an upscale riverside neighbourhood of southeast London. A tight-knit community was rocked by a horrifying discovery. Marianne Kilonzi, a 43-year-old banking executive who had recently relocated from Kenya, was found beaten to death in her own apartment. The Citibank vice president's life was brutally cut short behind the closed doors of her Woolwich flats, setting off an international manhunt for a killer who was no stranger to her. This is the true crime story of a rising star betrayed, the investigation that followed, and the ongoing quest for justice. Marianne Kilonzi was an accomplished professional and beloved friend, known for her warm smile and sharp intellect. Originally from Kenya, she had built an 18-year career with Citibank and in mid-2024 seized a chance to advance her career by relocating to London. In London, she assumed a vice president role in Citi's trade and working capital sales division, a testament to her talent and dedication. Colleagues described Marianne as an incredible professional with a sharp mind and a kind heart, someone who mentored others and even engaged in charitable causes like fundraising for cancer research. For Marianne, life in London's prestigious Royal Arsenal Riverside complex promised opportunity, but it also hid a danger she never expected. The tragedy unfolded in the early hours of Monday, January 13, 2025, inside Marianne's modern flat on Argyll Road in Woolwich. Neighbours who lived in the typically tranquil Royal Arsenal development were jolted awake by disturbing noises echoing through the building. Blood-curdling screams rang out from Marianne's apartment, shattering the usual quiet of the upscale complex. One resident recalled being awakened by a lady screaming and sounds of a violent struggle, thuds, banging, dragging, as if someone was being thrown against the floor or walls. Alarmed, this neighbour phoned the Metropolitan Police at about 3 am to report the horrifying commotion. Convinced that Marianne was in danger, police officers arrived within minutes and searched the area, but in the darkness of that early morning they found no obvious signs of trouble. The noises had subsided by the time officers were on scene, and they left after finding no specific incidents of concern at that moment. Unbeknownst to them, just behind Marianne's bolted door lay a crime in progress, or perhaps already completed, that would go undetected for 4 more days. Neighbours later reported that the final sounds of distress from Marianne's flat faded around 5 on that morning. After that, an eerie silence fell over Argyll Road. For days, no one saw or heard from Marianne. The absence of the normally diligent executive raised alarms at her workplace when she failed to show up for work and missed calls, a highly unusual lapse for someone so reliable. By Friday, January 17, concern for Marianne's welfare prompted colleagues or friends to contact authorities. That afternoon at approximately 5:25 am, Metropolitan Police officers forced entry into her first-floor flat on Argyll Road. Inside, they made a devastating find: Marianne Kilonzi's lifeless body. Marianne had been beaten to death in her own home. A post-mortem examination soon confirmed the cause of death as blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with a vicious attack. Investigators believe she likely died in the brutal assault that took place in the pre-dawn hours of January 13, the very incident neighbours had partly overheard. Her body had remained undiscovered for days, locked inside her apartment, even as police had been mere feet away outside her door on Monday. The scene that officers encountered on Friday was traumatic, evidence of a violent struggle and a life brutally cut short. Seasoned detectives and forensics teams descended on the normally peaceful complex to scour for clues to the killer's identity. Forensic investigators in protective suits examined the scene outside Marianne's Woolwich flat as a murder probe gets underway. Investigators combed through Marianne's apartment and even the building's rubbish bins for any evidence that might lead to her attacker. The fact that the door had been bolted from the inside suggested that Marianne had locked herself in for safety, or that her killer had secured the door behind him after the murder. Nothing was stolen from the apartment, and there were no signs of forced entry, pointing away from burglary and toward a far more personal crime. Police quickly announced that this was being treated as a murder investigation. The quiet luxury of Royal Arsenal Riverside had been violated by an act of extreme violence, and the hunt for Marianne's killer began in earnest. From the outset, detectives of the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Crime Command suspected that Marianne knew her killer. All the evidence, the lack of break-in, the furious violence, and the timing indicated an intimate crime, possibly stemming from a personal relationship turned deadly. Detective Chief Inspector Suzanne Zorin, leading the case, reassured the public that they believed the perpetrator was not a random attacker. Whilst we are in the early stages of this investigation, we believe the suspect was known to Marianne, and there is no wider risk to the public. In other words, this was a targeted killing, and those who knew Marianne would come under scrutiny. Leads developed quickly. Neighbours provided statements about the noises heard on January 13, with one describing a noisy disturbance between 3–4 a.m. that Monday. Some neighbours even recounted being told by police afterward that the suspect had left the country in the immediate aftermath. Indeed, by the time Marianne's body was found, her suspected killer was nowhere to be found. Within days, detectives were pursuing a specific individual, a man known to Marianne, as the prime suspect, and urgent inquiries revealed he may have fled the UK shortly after. The Metropolitan Police launched a fast-paced international manhunt for this fugitive, coordinating with airports and foreign authorities, as one line of inquiry indicated the suspect might have travelled abroad. Investigators, while officially tight-lipped about the suspect's name, confirmed they were tracking a named individual and not looking for anyone else in connection with the crime. According to Kenya media reports, that suspect is Brian Kiprop Kiplagat, a 30-something Kenyan man who had been a frequent visitor to Marianne's flat. Kiplagat was also a banker by profession and is believed to have been Marianne's boyfriend at the time of her death. He was well acquainted with the apartment, likely entering with Marianne's trust, and emerged as the prime suspect almost immediately. By the end of January, Kenyan news outlets even published Kiplagat's photo and stated that he was wanted for Marianne's murder, alleging he fled Britain for another country right after committing the heinous act. While Metropolitan Police in London did not publicly confirm the suspect's identity at that stage, to avoid jeopardising the case, they did make it clear that bringing him to justice was their top priority. As the investigation intensified, police urged anyone with knowledge of the suspect's whereabouts or the crime itself to come forward. They posted appeals across international borders and worked with Interpol and foreign law enforcement, recognising this had become a global hunt for a killer. Back in Woolwich, detectives meticulously gathered forensic evidence from the crime scene: blood, hair, fingerprints, anything that could scientifically link the murderer to the attack. They collected security camera footage from the apartment complex and surrounding streets, which reportedly showed a familiar figure entering Marianne's building around the time of the crime and leaving before dawn. This evidence, combined with witness testimonies from neighbours, built a chilling timeline of Marianne's final hours. Meanwhile, a parallel investigation examined the police response to the Monday disturbance call. It was a bitter twist. The officers had been alerted while Marianne may still have been alive, yet she wasn't found until it was too late. The Metropolitan Police acknowledged this and made a mandatory referral to the Independent Office for Police Conduct to review the handling of the initial 999 call. The IOPC inquiry would determine whether proper procedures were followed on January 13, and if anything could have been done differently to possibly save Marianne's life. This added another layer to the case. Not only did investigators have to find a murderer, but the police force had to confront tough questions about its own actions in the crucial moments of that fateful night. By early February 2025, the suspect was still at large and no arrests had been made yet. However, authorities remained confident in the case they were building. The evidence in hand was strong and pointed squarely to the missing boyfriend. Law enforcement in Marianne's native Kenya and other countries were on alert, and extradition plans were quietly being prepared should the suspect be located overseas. British prosecutors were ready to charge him with murder as soon as he was caught, meaning a trial could proceed in a UK court. In the United Kingdom, a murder conviction carries a mandatory life sentence, a fate that likely awaits Marianne's killer if he is captured and found guilty in a court of law. Scotland Yard officials publicly vowed that no matter where the suspect ran, they would work tirelessly to bring Marianne's killer to justice, a sentiment echoed by Marianne's grieving family and colleagues. The brutal murder of Marianne Kilonzi sent shockwaves far beyond the crime scene. In London, her co-workers at Citibank were devastated to learn that the vibrant colleague they knew was gone in such a violent manner. "We are deeply saddened by the tragic loss of our colleague," a Citibank spokesperson said in an official statement, extending condolences to Marianne's family and friends. At Citibank's Canary Wharf offices, grief counsellors were offered, and colleagues gathered to remember the positive, determined woman who had broken barriers and inspired others during her 18-year tenure. Many recalled how Marianne had mentored junior employees and participated in volunteer initiatives. Her absence left a palpable void in the workplace. Back in Kenya, the news was met with heartbreak and disbelief. Marianne's family, who had supported her ambitious move abroad just months earlier, were now faced with unthinkable loss. The Kenyan diaspora community in the UK and beyond mourned one of their own taken too soon. The close-knit Kenyan community abroad was shaken by the tragedy, rallying around Marianne's family with fundraisers and memorial services. Friends in Nairobi and London alike lit candles and shared tributes on social media, celebrating Marianne's many achievements, from her rise in the banking world to her love of Rotary Club service and mentorship of young professionals. She was remembered not just as a high-powered executive, but as a compassionate soul who never forgot to uplift others as she climbed the corporate ladder. For the residents of Royal Arsenal Riverside, the murder was a chilling reality check that even the safest neighbourhoods can harbour lethal secrets. "It's a fairly quiet block. Everyone keeps to themselves," one neighbour said, describing the general atmosphere of the apartment complex. The idea that such a horrific act happened next door while the rest of the building slept has left many neighbours anxious. Some have admitted they double-lock their doors now and are haunted by the memory of those late-night screams. The community sense of security was fractured, and it will take time to heal. Within the Metropolitan Police, Marianne's case became a rallying point to improve responses to domestic violence calls and concern for welfare checks. Although the full IOPC investigation is still pending, there is a collective resolve to learn from this incident so that no call for help is ever overlooked again. Detective Chief Inspector Soren spoke for all the officers on the case when she said, "This is a tragic crime, and our thoughts at this incredibly difficult time are with Marianne's loved ones." Seasoned detectives who have seen countless crime scenes were struck by the brutality inflicted on Marianne, and have been working around the clock, fueled by a personal drive to deliver justice for her. Months have passed since Marianne Kilonzi's life was brutally taken, but her case remains very much active. The prime suspect, Brian Kiprop Kiplagat, is still the target of an international manhunt. Every lead, from potential sightings to financial traces, is being chased down by law enforcement. Interpol notices have been circulated, and police in multiple countries are on standby to arrest him the moment he is found. There is cautious optimism that it's only a matter of time. The evidence gathered, forensic, digital, and testimonial, is safely in the hands of UK prosecutors, ready to be presented in court once the suspect is in custody. Prosecutors have indicated they will press for the maximum penalties under the law for whoever is responsible for this heinous murder. Marianne's family and friends remain steadfast in their hope for justice. They attend regular updates with British police liaisons and have even made public appeals urging the suspect to surrender. Each day that passes without arrest is agonising, but the outpouring of community support gives them strength. A small shrine of flowers and photos now adorns the entrance of Marianne's apartment building, a silent promise that she will not be forgotten. Her story has also sparked conversations about domestic violence and the unique vulnerabilities of immigrants who might not have extensive support networks in a new country. Advocates have pointed out that Marianne's case, while extreme, highlights the need for friends and colleagues to check in on those who may be in difficult personal relationships. Even as we await the final chapter, an arrest, a trial, and a verdict, Marianne Kilonzi's legacy continues to resonate. She lived a life of achievement and generosity, And though it ended in violence, those who knew her are determined that her story will not end there. In court, when that day comes, her voice will be heard through the evidence and the many loved ones speaking on her behalf. Their legal process will seek to hold the perpetrator accountable, and the world will be watching to ensure that happens. Impact statement. Marianne's death is a profound loss to her family, who lost a daughter and sister, to her colleagues who lost a brilliant mentor, and to a community that lost a role model. But her story is also a rallying cry. It reminds us that we must look out for each other and speak up at any sign of abuse or danger. It reinforces the importance of persistence in the pursuit of justice, the detectives refusing to give up the chase, the neighbours coming forward with crucial information, and the international community cooperating to catch a killer. Marianne Kilonzi's life was inspiring, and though her final moments were terrifying, the fight for justice in her name is unwavering. When her killer is finally placed in handcuffs and brought before a judge, it will be a hard-won triumph of perseverance and hope over brutality. Justice for Marianne is on the horizon. Let's keep her story alive. Share this story to honour Marianne's memory and remind the world that her killer is still out there. If you have any information that could help the investigation, speak up now. Every tip can make a difference. And remember to treasure your loved ones and stay vigilant. Follow for more true crime stories and updates. Together, we can help ensure that those who can no longer speak find justice, and that no story like Marianne's ever has to happen again.